Let's talk about some breakouts right now on FFT Express. I'm Adam Aizer with Heath Cummings. We'll definitely get some of Heath's breakouts, but he just went through his on the main show. So he said, why don't you come up with some breakouts? And I said, you know what? I've got like 10 of them handy. Actually, I didn't. It's very difficult to come up with some breakouts that Dave and Jamie and Heath haven't already said. So I went through a recent draft. I looked at some names, and I got a couple of fresh ones here, plus a recycled one. All right, Heath, ready?
Oh, yeah.
You had Rashee Rice as a breakout. I'm going with Xavier Worthy. I think when push comes to shove, he's probably a better receiver than Rashee Rice. I'm always wary of players coming off significant injuries. An LCL tear for Rashee Rice, I don't know how significant that is. It's not like he tore his ACL and his MCL and his LCL and, this and that with knee injury sometimes. It's just, one. It was the LCL. It wasn't even the ACL, right? Like, who needs the LCL? In my opinion. So hopefully Rashee Rice's injury, not that bad. But I do think Xavier Worthy is in position to become the number one receiver on the team. He's more of a downfield threat, obviously. I would say maybe can develop into more of a all-around wide receiver than what we've seen for Rashee Rice. So he is my breakout candidate. And I don't know who's going to have a higher ADP. I suspect it'll be Rice. So I hope to get a discount there on Worthy.
So I think that if you're taking into account the fact that Rice, at least right now, seems more likely to be suspended than Worthy does, or if you're taking into the account that Rice won't be healthy, then I think that makes a lot of sense. I don't think there's any reason to suggest that Xavier Worthy might be a better target earner than Rashee Rice. Maybe his targets will be worth more.
Yes.
And maybe he'll score on a bunch of long touchdowns, but I think that's the path to him having a great year. He did have 3 games at the end of the year with 9 targets or more, but we've seen a 5-game stretch from Rashee Rice. That's basically what he averaged at the beginning of last year. I think if both these guys are 100% healthy, then Rice is probably going to see 2 more targets a game than Xavier Worthy. And in PPR leagues, it'll make it really hard for Worthy to overcome that.
Yeah, maybe. The targets are going to definitely have to be worth more. And he is going to have to make plays downfield. And he's honestly going to have to – I think Worthy is going to have a breakout only if Patrick Mahomes bounces back and throws for at least 4,600 yards. So
and that we may need to take it one more step. Worthy's going to have a breakout only if the Chiefs' offensive line can be better than it was late last year. And it looks worse right now.
I feel like that can be overcome. I've seen that from Joe Burrow. He's had some, not last year necessarily, but some really bad offensive lines. It's a good point. But
I don't think Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice are Jamar Chase and T. Higgins.
No, I don't think so. Okay, another one for me would be one that's it was on Jamie's list. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you had it. Odunze.
I didn't, but I don't disagree. I'm more hopeful on the Odunze than planting my flag.
I agree on that. Yeah, I agree because he just didn't do anything really special last year. However, he had basically the same, if not slightly better rookie season than JSN. And what did JSN need? He really needed that DK Metcalf injury to unlock his potential. Well, you're not getting that necessarily for Odunze, but you are getting no Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen was a huge part of the offense that's gone. And not only that, you're also getting a much improved offensive line and probably a much improved play caller.
I think it will be really interesting to see what the Bears do in the draft. And that's all breakouts and sleepers and busts from early April are going to be dependent on what happens in the draft. But Ben Johnson over the next month is going to tell us quite a bit about what he thinks about his offensive weapons, whether it's DeAndre Swift or it's Cole Kmet or it's DJ Moore and Odunze. And then when we get that information, if we're going into the 2025 season with the current offensive weapons the Bears have, then I'm going to be much more on board with a Odunze breakout.
All right, one more breakout from me. We get some chuckles from the audience, and we'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today Express. All right, here's my breakout. It's Trevor Lawrence.
Of course.
I'm ready for it. Worried about the offensive line, though. They just haven't done enough. I really love to see them spend their first-round pick on an offensive lineman, but it's not really a good year for offensive tackles. But that wouldn't be that hard for him to break out. But this guy's got 4,400 potential in terms of receiving, maybe 350. in terms of passing yards and rushing yards. And that's pretty good. He just needs to have a better touchdown interception ratio, and he could easily be a top 12 quarterback. Maybe the ceiling is something like top 8 if everything goes right. But we love Brian Thomas Jr. This guy is going to make Trevor Lawrence so much better just with the playmaking ability. And you're just hoping Liam Cohen can take Trevor Lawrence and do what he did for Baker Mayfield, basically. So Trevor Lawrence is a breakout candidate that I have not drafted once, because quarterback is an extremely deep position with a lot of breakout.
I think it fits better as a sleeper than a breakout candidate, because I think there's been some of our drafts where he actually hasn't been drafted. Yeah. It is interesting, though, to your point. Trevor Lawrence has a season with 4,000 passing yards and 339 rushing yards, and he finished as QB 19 that year.
What year was that? 23?
2023. And I don't remember which set of excuses that year was, but I do think this breaks a record. And so I want to congratulate both of you for the most consecutive years as a breakout candidate without fulfilling it. I hope it works out, because I love Brian Thomas and I've got him on a lot of teams.
Yeah, he averaged 19 points per game that year. Trevor Lawrence, 21 touchdowns to 14 interceptions, right? That's horrible. In 16 games.
Yeah.
So
really
how does that change? I don't know. But if he can replicate the yardage.
I will just say this. That terrible 21 touchdown season, which was really bad, he had a 3.7% touchdown rate. He has thrown 2,034 passes in his NFL career, and he has a 3.4% touchdown rate.
Yeah, no, look, it was the touchdown to interception ratio that was terrible.
Well, no, I think he has to, undeniably, if he's ever going to be a good fantasy quarterback, he's got to get over a 4% touchdown rate. He did that 1 year, and it was also his best year for interceptions. But last year he had a 2.5%, or 2 years ago when he had the bad interceptions, it was a 2.5% interception rate, and his career's 2.3. So his touchdown to interception ratio in that 2023 season was very indicative of his career touchdown to interception ratio.
Yeah, no, it's going to have to change. He's just going to have to be better. There's really no getting around it here. All right, that's wow. How about that? That was pretty much the entire show.
You did a fantastic job.
Give me one breakout.
What's that?
Give me one.
What did you think of? Because I know he was awesome last year, and so it seems kind of like, oh, of course. But I really do think Jayden Daniels might just be the best quarterback in fantasy going into this year. There was a little bit of a drop-off last year from Josh Allen, not throwing quite as much. Just doesn't have the number one wide receiver anymore, and it was clearly made an impact. Patrick Mahomes hasn't been quite the same guy. Lamar Jackson's been up and down, sometimes really awesome, but I think Daniels has just about as good a chance as anybody. You look at his average from last year. I didn't even say this on the big show, but I think he averaged 24 fantasy points per game. And that included multiple games that I think you would want to Aizer stat.
I have it. He averaged in 6 point per passing touchdown leagues. I think a little bit more than 26 points per game if you take away a couple of games that he left early with an injury. And I absolutely would take those games away. It's only fair.
And what I'll say is, like, a lot of times what I've noticed in our drafts is either Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson's going to get drafted first, and then the other one's going to get drafted. And then there's like a round before the next quarterback gets taken. And it's a lot of times it's not even Jayden Daniels. I'm very happy to take Daniels as soon as those other two guys come off the board.
He's got everything that you want. He didn't lead his team in carries inside the 5-yard line, but he had a third of them. So I'd like for that maybe to be a little bit higher, but not that big of a deal. He had a third of his team's carries inside the 5-yard line. But I think one thing that encourages me with Jayden Daniels is that they'll let him throw. Right. There are plenty of games where he's throwing more than 30 times a game. So his passing numbers are going to be pretty good. You talk about 4,350 for Trevor Lawrence. We could be talking 4,100, 900 in terms of yards for Jayden Daniels, and I absolutely think he could be the number one quarterback in fantasy. All right, that's it for the breakouts. We'll talk to you tomorrow with busts on FFT Express.